Just go on there now and we'll do it all.
Is it gone?
He's gone. Oh, shit.
Was that recorded?
Yeah. I dropped me light.
You got to put that on, James.
I knew that. I spilled me Lucasade.
Oh, God, James.
Jesus Christ. We actually got... I was that excited. I fell off my chair. Shit.
Oh, God.
Not being able to speak is not the same as not speaking. You seem as if you like to talk. I like to let people talk who like to talk. It makes it easier to find out how full of shit they are.
What the hell did you just say?
You are the new student. Come closer.
You're listening to the Kung Fu Podcast presented by James Still.
Anybody who has some knowledge of Kung Fu can easily defeat you.
And Steve Newby.
Man, you come right out of a comic book.
If you flash him, even for an instant, a defiant eye, he'll pluck it out. And if you throw any American sass his way, he'll snap your back and your neck like they were twigs.
I've had my booze. I've had my booze for the evening. So I'm all loosened up.
I've had my painkiller. I'm all right.
Oh, good stuff. This is the episode, everybody, that we have got a guest coming on. This is the guest episode, isn't it? Eh? We're excited.
I'm surprised anyone wants to come and talk to us.
Well, to be fair, he's been putting it off, and he kept saying, "Oh, I'll do it next week. I'm tired. I need the prep. I need this and that." But anyway, so he's coming on later, and we'll introduce him in a bit. In the meantime, now, hey, you had a compliment in the form of an email from an ex-student.
I did. I can read that for you.
I think you should read it, because this is like this is a very rare thing, and I think our listeners need to hear this.
I've had a few from different people over the years. Some of them I just didn't want to hear from, but they even though they did, you know, real crap on me.
Yeah.
They then send me messages going, you know, were you the greatest? You were the best, you know, teacher and all this kind of thing. And then of course they do the Marty McFly, don't they?
I'm gonna have the sound from that film just there every time you mention Marty McFly.
I think we should have a little section called Marty McFly. Marty McFly strikes again, and then we can get people. You know, we can talk about.
You're just fishing for compliments. That's what you're doing.
Whenever you see people send me messages, or like you found that newspaper article.
Yeah.
And and you get all this. It's quite amazing, isn't it? How we should have a little section, you know, because we could fill it.
Yeah.
But this was a nice one. I mean, I loved this guy, actually. I thought he was a really nice guy. He's the guy I told you about when he first came. I think he was about 19. Right. He's in his 30s now, maybe later. And he came in and gone.
Oh, hang on, something's gone wrong. Your screen has just gone blank.
It's all right. It just says low battery. But
have you plugged it in, like I said?
Yeah, it's plugged in.
Have you turned it on, though? Because if it was plugged in, it wouldn't say low battery.
It's got a big light on it.
Well, are you sure it's actually plugged in?
It's plugged in. Yes, it's plugged in.
All right, well, why did it go off then?
I don't know. Let me just check. Hang on.
Oh, this is it. The fun and frolics. Now, not only have we got the audio was hard enough. Now we're dealing with video. Bloody hell.
I know. It's terrible, isn't it? Eh?
It's
Right.
like
Okay.
we're
I'm going to
talkie.
unplug this thing though.
All right.
I'm unplugging my laptop
Yeah, unplug your laptop. Just
because it's across my legs.
What was the issue here? Were you not plugged in? Be honest.
No, it was still plugged in. It just went off, as you say.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
Go on. You were telling us about this love letter.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Lovely. Yeah. I did tell you about this guy. He came to the class when he was about 19 and walked into the class. He says, "Oh, I'm interested in doing Kung Fu." And I says, "Oh, you done anything else before?" And he says, "Yeah, I've done ninjutsu." And I looked at him and I said, "Well, you couldn't have been very good. I saw you come in."
Did that go
I'm
down?
not sure.
Was that?
I'm
was
not
that
sure
in
if
good
you ever
spirits?
give me. Well,
Oh.
yeah, it was in good spirits. It's always in good spirits, but I'm such a sarcastic kid. Hi, James and Steve.
Hi.
Just want to say how much I enjoy the podcast. I'm just catching up with episode 20. Poor Steve getting compared to Marty McFly compelled me to write.
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
you, that is.
Yeah.
So it goes, I publicly wanted to voice how much I value Steve as my instructor in my martial arts formative years. He is the most erudite and inspirational of teachers, and I loved every minute under his guidance.
Wow.
The foundations he instilled in me have served me greatly throughout my long career as a competitor and coach. My very best to you both. Yeah. I'll write back.
Well,
I will write.
Are you not going to say a name, or do we not?
Oh, his name's Ali Blakey.
Well, hi, Ali, and thank you so much. That's a lovely, lovely sentiment. We love it. We like a compliment.
Yeah, we don't get they're few and far between. So
Yeah.
usually they're complaints. We only ever go to a place the second time to apologise. So.
We do. We appreciate that. Well, thanks. Ali's a great guy, actually.
He is a really nice
I remember when
I
I first joined, Ali was sort of quite established, really. He was a good fighter and everything. And I used to go to competitions, and I remember first competition I went to, I was watching Ali, and I thought, you know what? If I can maybe, be that good, I'll be happy.
Yeah.
I'll be happy, So, yeah, thanks, Ali. That's great. Love it. Glad you're enjoying it. Right. Anyway, now, shall we see about contacting our guest?
Hang on.
Just to get excited.
Jim Cairns recommends SJN Martial Arts Canada.
Jim
Steve
Cairns.
Newby is a good, experienced Kung Fu instructor. Sixth degree now.
Hang on. Are you telling me we had 2 compliments in one episode?
He was just sending, feedback about the, our Kung Fu. Yeah.
Right. Excellent.
Yeah,
well that's great.
Jim Cairns. He was a first degree when I went up to Scotland, and he's now is a 6th degree.
Oh, that's brilliant. Oh, well, thanks, Jim. That's great. Right. We should kind of talk a bit about moving on to our guest. How about that? Do you want to go for it? Right. Hang on. So, where is...
James,
I did an intro. Well,
my name's Jacqueline.
Yeah, well, yeah, because you're on Jackie's iPad. I mean,
we've been found out.
Technology.
But
I'm not sure if
on Saturday nights.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. Now we've introduced. Okay. Now we're a talkie. It's like in the 1930s America. Talkies. What the? Oh God. Right. Hang on. Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's do a bit of intro to this next guy. So, our guest, he has been studying Lau Gar for over 30 years. Okay, he's a former member of the Lau Gar National Fighting Squad, which means he's quite adept at the old semi-contact, light continuous, and full contact. Okay, competitive arena. He's no stranger to the ground fighting competitions and that side of things too. He's competed in a lot of external competitions. Reference ground fighting, and he also holds a 6th degree in Lau Gar. Not to mention, he is a guardian of the Lau Gar style, which, if I'm right, that doesn't he outrank you, at least on paper?
On paper.
Well, he's
they
a
all,
sixth
they all
degree.
like to think so. Yeah, they all like to think so.
Right. So
25 years when I took my 5th degree, 25 years ago.
Really? Oh, God. Okay.
Yeah.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to introduce to you Mr. Rash Patel.
Is he on?
He's in a mask, everybody. He's in a mask. Do you think the 2 meter rule is in effect? You know, we compliant?
I was going to turn up in a lion's head.
Oh, for God's sake. Listen, this is off to a bad start. He's already funnier than us. What's going on? Honest to God. How are you doing, Rash? Thanks for coming on. We really appreciate it.
Hello.
Hello.
How you doing?
We're all good. We're all good. How are you?
Tired.
Tired? Are you tired?
Well, what time is it there right now? 4:31, 12:31.
12:31, yeah.
4:31 here in the afternoon in Canada.
Wow, lovely. No, you know, plug Canada. Hey for Canada. Yeah. Rash, it's a real pleasure to have you here. You know, you're our first ever guest. Are you honoured?
And probably the last.
Honoured, yes. Thank you. Yeah.
Oh, well,
yeah.
I just listened to you guys talk and...
yeah. Oh, well, that's
drove
awesome.
in to drink.
Yeah,
and chill.
Well,
and
that's
chill.
right. We're all sufficiently lubricated here. So, Rash, I've just given everybody the lowdown on kind of who you are, but the broad strokes. Yeah, you know, I didn't big you up that much, to be fair, but what? but listen. Before we start, Rash, we've got a sort of a quick fire round to ascertain your eligibility to be on our Kung Fu podcast, because we don't know if you're cool enough yet. All right. Okay. So the quick fire round is going now. Are you ready? Master Yao, or Master Ken?
Oh, Master Yao.
Capoeira or Kung Fu?
Kung Fu.
Dimak or dim sum?
Oh, no, that's a difficult one.
It is. We've got to eat though, right?
One.
Quick fire, Rash. Quick fire.
Oh, okay. Let's go dim mak. Yeah.
oh. I wasn't expecting that.
Dim sum.
I would have gone dim sum.
You can ask me about dim mak, and I'll tell you the truth about dim mak.
Oh. Hang on. Yeah. We're nearly done. Lau Gar or lager?
Lau Gar, of course.
Okay. Bruce Lee or Bruce Willis?
Who?
Bruce Lee or Bruce Willis?
Bruce Lee, of course.
Kung Pao Chicken or Kung Pao the movie?
Kung Pao Chicken. I didn't ever like the Kung Pao movie. Yeah.
Shanghai Nights or Shanghai Noon?
Shanghai. Oh, that's the same thing, isn't it? Almost.
No. For the connoisseur, they would say
Jackie
Shanghai.
Chan.
They would say Shanghai Noon.
Yeah, Shanghai. Jackie Chan was in both, wasn't he?
He was, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Okay. All right, Rash. Cool. You're cool enough to be on our show.
Serious answers. Okay.
Serious answers. Rash, basically, we started off, we were talking about, what is really interesting about you is that, as you know, Steve, well, he can be a bit cranky at the best of times. He very rarely sends out compliments to people. And I mean very rarely. Is this true? Is this true, old man? I mean, you know. However, as of late, he has been very complimentary about you.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay.
And he very much enjoys the cut of your jib and what you're doing. And we were hoping you might sort of tell us a bit about your thoughts on the way you train Lau Gar, sort of the direction you're taking, your classes in relation to the Lau Gar style. And we kind of want to start off with sort of all the, the ground fighting stuff. So, I mean, listen,
tell us your story, Rash.
Yeah, tell us your story.
Oh, right. Okay. It's a long one, and it's changed several times. Yeah.
I've got plenty of coffee.
Okay, so I started Lau in the 80s. Different time, there was a tournament, the points fighting tournament boom at that time, and I was quite into that in the early days. But I started in a traditional class, doing with traditional values. But I think back then there were two types of Lau Gar schools, if you like, and this is where Lau Gar has got kind of a mixed reputation, if you like. So in that era, there was a lot of people that did Lau Gar that were into the tournament scene, and they trained strictly to fight, and the Lau Gar, the style, if you like, was secondary. So the first thing that they were interested in was competition fighting, and the second thing they were interested in, or actually some of them weren't interested at all. They just did it, they just did it to get a grade, and they never understood it at all. But back then, in that time, there were a minority of people that were into Lau Gar, for Lau Gar, the real style, the tradition. People say the traditional element of it, but it is a traditional style. It is a solid, real martial art. It's not a competition style, and that's how it got perceived in later years. It's how it got perceived by other martial artists and other martial art styles and other kung fu styles. They referred to it as a tournament style, and I don't like that. I think it's a proper martial art. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing it. So now, something I want, when you prompted me to come on, and something I want to talk about, and how Lau Gar stands in the modern world now, which we're, I kind of, I will contradict myself sometimes, but
that's all right. We do it all the time, Rash. Go ahead.
Yeah. It's changed.
We even contradict other people.
Yeah. So times have changed. Martial arts have changed. The modern threat has changed. Lots of reasons why people do martial arts. Have changed, and I think it's important to at this time to respect all the different reasons why people train. Many different reasons, but there is a fundamental reason, and that might offend some people, because I think that we could list them. I could say put them in order, but I think that's the best way to do it. And the top of the list is that you train Lau Gar because it is a martial art, and you understand it, and you understand how to use it, and then you learn it, and then you develop competency in it, and then you become competent in it, I think is what's important. But it is a fighting art. It is about a fight. Have a fight, use it in a fight, but not everyone wants to fight, and this is how it's changed, and this is why people learn it for different reasons, and you've got to respect that as well, I guess. I've got students who don't like fighting. I don't like fighting. If I'm pushed to have a fight, I'll probably be quite unhappy that someone's made me have to fight them.
But you're talking self-defense then, yeah?
Self-defense in reality,
in
real life, not for competition, not for any other reason. So lots of people do Lau Gar. This is where I might offend some people, but lots of people do Lau Gar but don't understand Lau Gar.
Right.
That's what we're all about, really. Rash.
I'm not rubbishing anyone.
No.
I'm just saying that is the way. And also, it takes a long time to get any good at it, to become useful at it, So, there's a lot of people Yeah.
When you say people don't understand Lau Gar, I mean, we're generalizing. I understand that. Nothing specifics. What exactly do you mean by they don't understand Lau Gar? Can you just elaborate on that?
Okay, absolutely. Good question. I'll use myself as an example.
Yeah.
Every form I know.
Yeah.
I know, multiple applications for the movements contained within the forms, but I know all the principal applications. That's something I can expand on in a bit as well.
Yeah.
And I would say I've trained them to a level of competency that I could use them.
Right.
So it's a case of learning them, understanding them, applying them, and then you have to go on a journey of training it to become competent at it. And then you've got to spar with it. And I'm not talking about put your gloves on and spar. It's a different kind of sparring.
Okay.
So does that make sense?
Yeah.
There's not a single form that I know, whether it be an open hand form or a weapons form, that I don't know what the movement's for.
Yeah.
I couldn't say other people in Lau Gar could say the same thing. So I'm not rubbishing them. All I'm saying is, if that is the case, do something about it. Ask your teacher. Go and train? Yeah.
I mean, basically, you had the premise there that Lau Gar, in your sort of, the way you think and approach Lau Gar is, first and foremost, it's a fighting style. So are you, in a way, you kind of saying that if you're studying Lau Gar and you don't understand application of form, are you kind of in a roundabout way saying you're not really doing Lau Gar? Or, because as you know, I was going to say, people do train martial arts for a lot of different reasons, right?
Yeah.
So you've got people who, just want to do sort of like the forms and, make them elaborate, wushu. Some people like the internal, we've talked about internal side, but the meditation and stuff like that. And other people like the competition fighting. But to you personally, is knowledge and application of the forms of Lau Gar top?
At the top, yeah. That's what I'm trying to get across. Yeah.
And we talk about that all the time. And the thing is, we've said before that a lot of people do martial arts, any martial art, not just Lau, and they just not necessarily understand what they're doing, and they don't find out how they're working it, what kind of techniques they could use from those forms or whatever. Yeah. But the way that I tend to look at it is when you're looking at people, and people go into competitions and do forms in a competition, and at higher grades, those forms look as if they're a bit more fluid in them, but they're still doing them in the same size, big hand movements that they'd have done them when they learnt them. And for me, the way I see it is, as you digest that form, it becomes a much more viable, useful move, as opposed to just doing the move. Well, in demonstrations, they always end up doing the move, so the set always looks the same, as if they're trying to prove to people that, oh, this is how I learnt the form, so this is how I do the form. But I don't agree with that. This is how you learnt the form, but this is how you actually use the form. And I'd like to see that in demonstrations. I'd like to see someone actually demonstrate a form so you can barely see the movements. You can, and then it's for an expert, who the panel's supposed to be when they're looking at them, to judge whether that person understands what he's doing with it. Instead of sort of big hand movement, it's like whoop, whoop, boom, kind of little quick movements.
Done Lau Gar done properly with application in mind looks different. There's a lot of people that train, and like I say, they haven't got the fighting element part of it, and they look. Actually, I'm going to use myself as an example. You guys may or may not know, I sit on the grading panel, and I've done for 10 years or so now. So on the Blacksash grading panel, so I see people grade. If I were to grade myself for my first degree back then, I would fail myself. Okay, so what I mean by that, in the early days of my training, I was very much into the tournament fighting. And when it came to the Lau Gar, I did have a flair for it. Okay, I was good at making it looked good. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I was good at looking good. I was good at making a form look good, but actually I didn't know how to apply it. Not all of it.
Yeah.
My percentage of me
But that's
actually understanding was probably low. So I would probably say I only knew 30% of what I.
But that's the same as anyone who approaches Lau from a competition perspective. People don't understand the set, but they just look damn good when they do something. So,
but even 30% is good back then, because there was just like people would go to a class to do a warm up, do a lot of fitness training, 10 minutes of syllabus, and then put your pads on the spar for an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Or the set was at the end. I did go. One of the classes I went to was like that. And it was tournament oriented, but back then I did have traditional instructors, good traditional instructors, so I did have a good basis. So even then 30% was a lot more than a lot of other people, but I still didn't. I would say basically what it comes down to is Mastio sat on a panel looking at people, and he'll be looking at a student and go, he looks good, but he has no clue, or he doesn't get it, or he doesn't know what he's doing. It's okay, good, tidy technique, but he couldn't apply it. You can quite clearly see someone who can and can't.
Is it that relevant though, Rash? I mean, given that, at that stage, right? You've done 3.5 years training to black? Is that right? Is it 4?
Well, no, back then it was a lot longer. It was like a minimum of 6 years. Now it's kind of, people are sort of going fast.
Yeah.
But, really 3.5 years or 4, you've got to be training 3 or 4 times a week. I don't like that, 3 or 4 years. I don't like people quoting times.
In a way, do you kind of think you hold the grade of black sash to be quite? There's a lot more pressure on you than needs to be. I mean, you have quite. It seems to me, listening to you now, that you've got quite high standards for black sashes. But I would argue that a black sash is probably a gateway to your martial arts. It doesn't mean you've attained a level of competency, but you still have to understand a bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay, so here it is. I think Mastio sees it like when you get your black sash, you're just starting out.
Right.
And that's his opinion, and he said that. He's
it's like getting your car license. Isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like getting your car. You get your car license. That's when you actually start learning to drive.
Yeah.
But I think, having trained 35 years, it doesn't have to be like that. So I'm gonna have a different opinion to different take on it to Mastio. And I think, and this is what I do now, I've changed my way of thinking. Not so long ago, in the last 5 years, really. I kind of, Steve can help me with this. When we teach, we've done it so many different ways that we've over time refined our teaching to how we teach now. And sometimes you teach quite a few moves, 5 or 6 moves, and then the student comes back next week and then you show him some more. And in 2 weeks' time, he's got the set down, but he hasn't got it down. You then spend the next year trying to fix it.
Yeah.
Correction. Whereas the way I teach now is 1 to 3 moves, and it's dependent on them. Right. So why not correct those 3 moves and make sure they've got it? It's not. The other thing I'm going to say, Kung Fu is not that hard. Okay, some people find it really hard, but I think. I know it's easy for me to say now, but hopefully in time people will look back and go, you know what? It's actually, there's nothing really difficult about rotating your wrist from here. They're trying
to make it out that like every set is, has to be approached differently. But when you look at the sets over a period, once you understand them, talking about the first 7 sets or whatever. They've just got little bits added to them, but most of the movements, and I always say this on the podcast, most of the movements are the same movements, but done for a different reason, right? For a different technique, but they're the same movements. So they have the same mechanics. And because they have the same mechanics, it's not like you're learning anything new. You're just learning a different reason. So it's about, that's why I think it's really important to practice the reasons and not just the form.
Absolutely.
So you're taking it apart.
Absolutely. So this is what I've done. I only teach a handful of moves, 1 to 3 moves. If student comes back, he shows that he's been practicing. He shows he can remember them, and the minor corrections, and then you might add on, depending on his ability to learn and retain information, and therefore you've got less to fix at the end. You just polish, or you do minor fixes rather than fix. So say we another way to look at it. Say a form's got 30 movements, okay, and then you learn 5 and then 5 and then 5 a time, and then it went to 30. So okay, so say a set's got 30 moves, and the student has got to practice. He's learnt 30 moves, or she's learnt 30 moves. Move 1, 2, and 3, or 5, only gets practiced on a bigger cycle. You see what I mean? Yeah. Unless you break the set down and you just practice moves 1 to 5. So there's less chance of them improving, or it just takes longer to improve them. Yeah. So better to have moves 1 to 5 fixed, and a good standard, good level, good technique, good posture, good base, good power, good structure, good coordination.
I think what you said earlier, though, I mean, a lot of people, like you say, they train martial arts, but they're not interested in fighting or anything. And a lot of them just want to take the grades. And then you've got commercial instructors who are just going to try and get them through their grades. They're like just trying to pass the test rather than actually teach them stuff. And so you're always going to have that problem anyway. But I can see, that's a really good way of, if you've got that kind of passion and that kind of time, and you're not relying on it as a financial, income, then you can obviously go for students in that way. And I think that's a...
Do you think that your method of teaching, Rash, is due to class size? I mean, over the years, obviously class sizes have gone down. Do you think as the class sizes reduce, we have to the quality output has to be more?
Yeah, but also the knowledge, the understanding of the instructor and the competency of the instructor. Back then, you probably got lots of instructors that didn't get it, and they was just passing it on down the line, and just grading people. And again, look, I'm not rubbishing people. I'm just saying.
No, but it's a general structure of martial arts, isn't it? That's the way martial arts works. Some people,
not just in our style.
And that's why I say martial arts. It's the same everywhere. You get people through their grades. Like I just said, people will get people through their grades. Some of them want to teach. They have a passion for teaching, but they've never been taught how to teach, and they've never even understood the syllabus. But they just teach what they think it is, and that's why you've got such a diversity in the way that people understand. And you can look at that, and you travel around the country as I did. You go to different places and take over from different people. Jesus Christ, some of the things you just wouldn't get your hat on what I saw. So,
So what I did, I said, forget what anyone else is doing. Forget the standard of anyone else. I'm just going to concentrate on me and my students. And this is what I want for them. And, so my white sash, if you like, he or she will learn the syllabus. And it doesn't matter what age either, even the young ones. Well, it's a little bit different teaching the younger ones, but because you do have to adapt for them. But generally speaking, they will learn the movements a few at a time. And like I say, a good instructor will acknowledge each student at each person's level. So it's easy to blanket teach. And, stand in front of a group of 20 people and say,
teach by rote.
Yeah, here's 3 moves. Next week is, but actually, have they got the 3 moves that you showed them the week before? I make a point of spending time with each person if I can. If I can't, then I'll spend group time with three people or whatever in a small group, and then whoever I've missed out, I'll kind of pass around, and then whoever I've missed out, I'll make a note, and I'll make sure I see him next week, and so on. So, and people who train with me know when the end of class is never the end of class, because people come and ask, and I stay there for another hour if I have to. It's just something I do, and because I can as well. I don't have kicked out of any hall. So, but yeah, so I made an active decision to say, right, whatever my students learn, they'll learn the techniques, then they'll learn the application, and this is at white sash level.
Yeah. And
then they develop some competency in them, in partner drills. So I've formulated quite a few drills that I picked up over the years and made up myself, so people can develop that competency. And that's the real reward, really, I think, for them as well, because they've learnt something. They had no clue what it was to start with, and then they're actually using it. And that's the reward for me and for them, because they get some satisfaction out of that, I think. And
what about the hand blocks and kick blocks, Rash? If you're saying you're developing, you're giving them techniques, etc. I mean, as we've kind of discussed before, reference to hand blocks and kick blocks, they're kind of like fast food, aren't they? But they are basic applications for beginners, really. Where do you stand with the hand blocks and kick blocks? Do you think that it's an archaic sort of part of the syllabus that dates back to the time when classes were huge and you needed to give people an instant fix? And do they detract from the learning of Lau in a small way?
Okay, so that's really down to the interpretation of the instructor and the student, or how they practice hand and kick blocks. Mastiao, that wasn't ever traditional. Mastiao invented those, and it was a good invention, in my opinion, because what he did is he said, look, I've taken some movements out of a set. Here they are. Here's how you can practice them in an applicable way with a partner.
Yeah. Based on the martial arts that were around at the time, the one-step sparring kind of thing.
Karate.
He gave a formula of practice. It's not set in stone, and it would never work that way in a real fight. No way. But he just gave a blueprint of how to practice. So, to answer your question, we've got 10 hand blocks, 10 kick blocks, but there could be 100 hand blocks, 100 kick blocks, or 1,000 if you took every movement out the set and made a number 11 and made a number 12 hand block and then 13. You can make your own, and the 1 to 10 is just an example of a method of practice. And Mastiao often said when he was training in China, he spent a long time taking movements out the set and sitting with a partner in live practice, getting them to work, and and there's a big hint and tip there for people to take on board, I think.
They got to take things apart, haven't they?
But if you've been to some of my, I've taught some seminars and bits and bobs, and over the last couple of years, I've implemented these drills, which allow repetitive practice of a particular movement in a quite a good way. In fact, Wing Chun do it as well.
Are you talking about limited sticking hands, like a roll, or?
It's something I'd probably have to. I'll send you a video, and then you can insert it here if you like, or something.
Okay.
And you can see my students doing it. Okay. But it's just a repetitive drill. Now, look, when you practice number 1 and 2 hand block, you practice it once, and then you restart. You have to go back to the starting position. Again, you're doing a cycle of things, but it's only getting a little bit of practice. Whereas this drill, where this drill I've formulated, you're getting lots of continuous practice, and it just helps you improve a lot quicker. It helps people to get it, and then people go on a journey with it, on a journey of what part of their arm they connect with, how early they pick it up, whether they stick, whether they hit it, whether they do it softly, lightly, hard. You can go on a whole journey with it. So I think it's a clever drill. And my evidence is that it works through my students becoming competent quite quickly. It helps people get competent quicker, if that makes sense.
Right. Okay. How much of that is physical, Rash, and how much of it is you instilling in the students, the methods and the reasons why they do things? Because you can give your students 10 applications of the first move of the first set, and you could say, do this, do this, do this, do this. At what point do you then say, now it's up to you to figure out how to apply it yourself without, so you give them the, teach a man to give him a fish, he'll eat for a day, give him teach him the fish, he'll fish for a lifetime sort of thing,
Yeah. Well, it goes back to the old way of teaching. And this is another thing, a whole separate discussion we could have, and Steve would agree, on the old way to the current time that we're in now. Things have got to change. When I first started training on Master Yao, he would give me snippets. I could barely, he'd give you a little bit, and then you'd go away and you'd think about it and you'd work on it. Yeah. And then next time he sees you, he'll see if you've worked on it. And if you have, he might give you a little bit more. If you haven't, he probably wouldn't say anything to you and won't give you the time.
You haven't trained.
Which is an old way of teaching it, and it's very fair, But
I think it's fair, but it's not conducive to the modern world. People want fast results nowadays.
Yeah, they don't want to train as much.
Yeah, but on the flip side of that, like what you've just said, on the other side, it's not acceptable. Well, I wouldn't say it's good either, because now students turn up and say, well, I've just paid you for my class, teach me.
Yeah, but
show me, because I've paid you.
Yeah,
and that's the wrong attitude as well.
Maybe 70% of them have already been to other classes where they've had that, and they've been given that, and then they've learned nothing, and they think they've learned everything. They come thinking they know it all, but they then also come demanding to know more. And it can be quite a problem with the students like that, because they are.
But that's the modern way, and in MMA and other, because I've got lots of MMA friends and I go and train with them, and other schools and jiu-jitsu and other stuff that I do. They don't have that level of respect. No, so it's very much a case of they don't have the old traditional values and the Budo and all the rest of it. It's just different, and it's very much that the loyalty doesn't exist. Whereas what we've got in Lau Guardian, or what traditional kung fu styles is about, your teacher will show you some movements. You've got to earn their respect by practicing before they show you any more. And otherwise, like Maciel says, I've just showed you this. If you can't do that properly, what's the point of me showing you some more?
I totally agree with that on so many levels, Rash. But in this modern world, like you said, people are paying. They expect a product. And if you're running a big martial arts organization and you're getting money for grades and stuff like that, that's in some way attacks the integrity of the martial art, because then you're not interested in teaching. You're just interested in, people paying for the next grade and give them a little bit, etc. Yeah. I think it's a rare way of thinking, isn't it? Very rare.
Yeah. But like I said, I don't care what anyone else is doing. I'm just going to make sure this is how I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
Well,
that's active choice.
Okay, so that's what impressed me, Rash, when we talked not long ago. I know we've talked for a long time, but when you started showing me and telling me about the way that you take the syllabus that much further, where you've got hand blocks or parts in the set where you might trap the leg, and that's as far as you go in terms of the syllabus, in terms of giving people information, but you take it that step further, and that's what really intrigued me about what you're doing with the syllabus, and how you've got to do that, how you've been able to do that by, learning, training with other people and different kind of people, and where you, instead of just trap the leg, you want to take them right to the ground and like get them down there. And traditionally, I wouldn't say traditionally, but sort of 90% of classes that are taught, weekly or bi-weekly or whatever, they tend never to have the equipment that they, in the old days, it was like a concrete floor, a solid, wooden floor, and they never really went down on the ground. And like you say, when you started competition, semi-contact, points fighting, that was the essence, that was the whole thing of Lau. That was where they were strongest, and that's what they really, honed in on. And they didn't really care that much for getting on the ground. And it's only over the last few years where you've got the strength of this Brazilian jiu-jitsu type of thing has come in, and they've made it popular, that everyone now in martial arts are looking at that kind of idea of, throw him to the floor kind of thing, as in Life of Brian. Don't know if you've seen Life of Brian. Throw him to the floor. Oh, that's philosophy.
All right.
Yeah. It's a sign. Yeah. It's a sign. So just imagine, I mean, that's what really intrigued me about you, is that you have taken that on board and you've started applying that. And tell us a little bit about that, how you started doing that, and how you how you made that work within your style.
So times have changed, and I think Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is one of the fastest growing martial arts of this time at the moment. Really popular, and obviously MMA has been around since that's been around for some time as well, but it was never popular. It was always frowned upon and seen, people had a negative opinion of it for a long time. But that's changed now. It really has changed, I think, and probably to do with the fact that the rules of it have changed as well over the years. Original UFCs and prides and all those kind of things. Head stomping was allowed. Some gouging was allowed. You could kick someone like a goal kick when they're down. But now, in the modern UFC rules, you can't kick a grounded opponent. And what warrants a grounded opponent is if he's got 3 points on the floor. Right. So that's 2 feet and an arm or an elbow or something. 3 points touching the floor, then you can't hit, kick him in the face. So time ago that was allowed. So that's changed. What happened? Right. So obviously I fought in point fighting, and I did some full contact fighting as well. So kind of naturally, point fighting and then continuous, which is full contact anyway. And then it's supposed to be light continuous, but it never is. And then I had a handful of full contact fights, just a natural progression of competition fighting, if you like. And I'd done that for quite a long time, as well as kept my traditional. That I think I was one of the few people that kind of did both. So I had a friend I went to school with. His name is Paul, and at the time we were at school, we were both training. He was training somewhere else, and I was training in a kung fu school. And I did go across to his club a couple of times and have a spar and stuff. And it was good. But I was doing what I was doing what I started, and I stuck with that. When we finished school, we kind of went our separate ways. And then the world of Facebook, he popped up as a friend on Facebook, I think in 2006 or something like that. And then we exchanged some messages and said, oh yeah, we should get together and train. And I think in 2000, I started doing some wrestling, or going to some strength and conditioning classes and wrestling classes with a guy called Amir Ismaili, who's an Iranian wrestling coach in Bristol. Unfortunately, he died in 2006. So the late Amir, but he was an Olympian. He trained people that were in the British Olympic team as well. So he's originally from Iran. I can't remember. I don't know what year he came over, but his students were in the British Olympic team. So he was that good, and he taught a whole wide range of people from different disciplines, you know, to cricketers, to rugby people. You know, he was a proper drill instructor. So, yeah, I think 2 years went by, and Paul, you know, we talked about, oh yeah, we should meet up, and we finally got together to do some training. And you know, what do? We had a spar, of course. What else do you do?
Yeah.
So stand-up wise, no problem. You know, I could easily, you know,
and him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to blow my own trumpet, but yeah, you know, I was comfortable.
Yeah.
And yeah, I could beat him in stand-up. And then what happened was, he closed the distance on me, and then we got into a grapple, and he started employing some dirty boxing, and then proceeded to take me down. And then I was a beginner. So I beat him in stand-up. I'm allowed to say that. But then he beat me on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I've been training a lifetime, and you know, at that time over 20 years, and he made me feel like a complete beginner. You know, so you could take me down at will. You tied me up and just finish me. And you could finish me with striking. He would armbar me. He'd put me in a triangle and choke me. He'd take me back. All sorts of stuff. And I kind of felt pretty useless, to be honest. So I could have done one or two things. I could have run and hid and said, no thanks, you know, that's not for me. I'll just carry on doing what I'm doing. And obviously the competitive side of me said, no, I'm not having that. Teach me what you're doing.
Right.
So yeah, you know, it was a tough lesson, if you like, and I took it on board. Then my grappling journey began, if you like.
Right. Right.
But I got into grappling from an MMA point of view, because he was an MMA fighter. He wasn't a Brazilian jiu-jitsu person. He did grappling in mixed martial arts.
Right.
You know, he was a cage fighter. The person he trained with is a guy called Mark Weir. Mark Weir is a former fighter that was on the UFC roster. So, you know, he was that good. Yeah, and then started my grappling journey, if you like. And yeah, did you have a question for me then?
I'm just like, when you say that sort of you were now the beginner sort of thing, and it's like, teach me what you want, teach me what you've got, and all that sort of thing. Was it ever sort of reciprocated? Did he ever turn around and say, "Oh, teach me some stand-up, Rash"? Yeah,
of course. Yeah. There was lots of other things I should. And when it came down to the takedown stuff, I already had a lot of shui jiao, you know, Chinese wrestling, and throws through kung fu. And obviously I was going to Olympic wrestling classes as well. So I already had some wrestling experience and takedown experience. So, you know, I wasn't a complete beginner in that. It was just more the control and pressure on the ground, really. So, we had a good exchange, and you know.
But it's the way you adapted it, and or even the way you adapted. I don't know whether you would say you adapted Lau to continue the fight on the floor, or whether you adapted the fight on the floor to fit your Lau if you was to fall down. Which kind of direction would you say you did that? How did you do that?
Well, all right. So, if I continue my story in the grappling, I got into grappling then. So I'll bring it back to
that's
how
fine.
it ties into Lau. But I got into grappling for the sake of grappling. I never, when I started out, I just wanted to know just enough so I could deal with most people.
And you're talking about sport, yeah? You're talking about sport.
Yeah. So to begin with, I just wanted to know enough so I could handle myself and get back to my feet. And you know, I didn't want to become an accomplished grappler or anything. However, the more I did it, the more I got into it, There was a whole new world of stuff to learn and conquer, you know, if you like. And it is a case of, you know, make mistakes and you have to fix them. Yeah. It's a whole competitive thing. It's a really, you really get drawn into the not as in competitions, competitive for competition, but competitive for yourself as a person. Between another human being.
Like the wrestling, it's the same kind of thing.
Yeah, because you're trying to.
I mean, we always on the podcast. I always say, because my opinion, of course, and I think you agreed with me that, you know, whilst grappling is a great sport, wrestling is a sport in itself. You're coming into a situation where there's self-defense, and yes, like you said, if you fall down, you've got a way of getting up, you've got a way of survival. But purely on a grappling point of view, it's not going to be easy in the real world in terms of ending up on the floor with one person and then finding out all his mates are coming around the corner. Because, you know, that's why I've never been into grappling for that reason.
I just thought, and that's where it fails. That's where it fails. You know, you've got to understand that, and you've got to respect that. You know, that's the bigger picture of hopefully we'll come back to from the start of our conversation and tie it back into Lau Guardian, hopefully. But so I got into grappling for grappling, specializing in grappling, and you know, pure grappling. So we took the striking element out, and just that's what pure grappling is: jiu-jitsu. I don't want to say I got into catch wrestling. That was the original thing I really took a fancy to and started to learn. And then soon after, I sought out a coach, Eric Paulson, who's a former mixed martial artist, who was a catch wrestler from America. He came over and did a seminar that, you know, blew my mind, and that was it. He was my coach for grappling then. So every opportunity I could train with him, you know, I would. And for he is one of my main catch wrestling coaches, if you like. And I attribute my skills to him for that as well. But I have trained with other grappling people, specialists as well, in recent years. So, so I did the grappling for the grappling's sake of it. And then, you know, in the back of my mind, well, not in the back of my mind, alongside the grappling, I was always doing Kung Fu and still had my very strong thought on self-defense and real life self-defense, on the street self-defense. So I started implementing my ideas of striking on the ground using Lau and not necessarily MMA. So you've got all your kickboxing, big punches and elbows and strikes, and actually they do trap as well. They do trap, see and press, and they drop an elbow in. So it does cross over to...
we've done a video on the elbows and stuff, a
lot of stuff we do in Kung Fu.
I can totally relate to that, Rash. I was telling Steve on a previous podcast, in the Army, they had us sort of doing so almost like wrestling, you know, but you start on your knees and then one person has to get you on the floor, you know, and there's a circle. And what I found was doing a lot of sticking hands with Steve and understanding just about these, you know, rotations and your gaits, you know, being able to just sort of sense someone's grabbed me there, or just, you know, trap them with my elbow, etc., and get into a position to then strike whilst they're on the floor, sort of thing, because they're trying to grab you, etc. It's amazing how it falls into place. And you say, oh, it's sticking hands. It's sticking hands is stand up. Well, but it really can translate onto the ground to a point.
Yeah, but grappling actually starts standing.
Okay, yeah, I agree. I was just using that as the example of what I was doing. But
No, I understand that. But you know, good point, and something that's worth explaining. Grappling does start standing, and this is why it's so good for Lau as well. It's the next. I would say it's good for people that have been training a long time. Okay, so you need to training a long time in Lau Guardian. So, or training at a time that they're competent. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So once you've you understand Lau Guardian, you can use it, and you develop your pushing hands, your sticking sensitivity, and you can do that well enough, or at a good level, at a good standard. Then what next transpires? The next range is grappling. So say you've done that for 30 years or 40 years, and you kind of a bit stale and I haven't learned anything new. Grappling is the next thing. So from sticking hands, you then grapple, you then cow, grab around the back of the neck, or someone follows you into a headlock or gets in close, and then you can start working your grappling range from there. And that's where it begins. And then where I've continued it and glued it together is I'll start from long range, big strike or kick, leg or hand. You come into contact with your partner, either blocks or you've hit him. You've hit him and he's grabbed you for dear life, or he's blocked it, and then you're into some. Yeah,
we've talked about that in a podcast previously, and I kind of called it like no man's land, where a grappler has got to get between, from his position to your position without getting hit. So that point in between, if he can't throw punches, he's got to try and get to you. And I called that kind of no man's land, where you start into the grappling, and you start in, and the sticky hands applies then, or sensitivity can apply. And you've been able to do that.
Yeah, but there's a case now, look, where grapplers are really cocky. A lot of jiu-jitsu people are really cocky, and they advertise jiu-jitsu is the #1 self-defense.
I've seen that.
But they're good, and they are cocky because, and I could be cocky with that because I hold those skills. And what they're talking about is you've got two people, one's a striker, one's a grappler. Striker's got one attempt to either knock this person out or hurt him or damage him to the point that he can't function properly. If he hasn't, by the time the grappler's got hold of him, he's finished. Now, that sounds horrible. Me as a Kung Fu person, and I did this with my friend, and I did this with my wrestling coach. I said, right, let me try some stuff on you. Let me try. And I had ideas in my head. My mind was working overtime. And another colleague of mine, which I showed some stuff, he was a senior martial artist. And when I did it to him and I told him about this, his mind was working overtime like mine was. So I had ideas of, I'll stick my fingers in his eyes, or I'll stick my finger into his nose, or try and gouge him, or turn his head, or do something, that I could use that I know that I think would work. As soon as my partner cottoned onto that, he just suggested and dropped his head or covered, and I was taken down. And then I was in his realm, and I was the beginner. So, and grapplers close distance really fast. If you go on YouTube and you watch any Olympic wrestling, not WWE, because that's a load of crap. It's good for the people that want to watch it, but Olympic freestyle wrestling, you'll see how fast they are, and they close distance fast. You would not be able to get, you'd be lucky to get a strike off against a seasoned wrestler. So once you got hold of you, you're done with. It's so wrestling is so hard. It's so tough. It's so overpowering. So overwhelming. The pressure, the hand pressure, everything. It just feels horrible when it's done properly. So, and obviously the Gracies, Hoist Gracie in the early UFC proved, that's why another reason why they're cocky, because there was boxers, there was other karate guys, and the jiu-jitsu guys would just go in and take everyone out with grappling.
A lot of the time the rules, and I can say this, the rules were kind of aimed for them. In that sense, they could use their uniforms, they could use all sorts. Wrestlers couldn't use their shoes, they couldn't wear shoes that they would normally have used. So a lot of the time, the rules. I mean, it's back to this. I mean, I'm not trying to argue the point, but I think it's a good conversation. That when you're looking in the realms of sport, I can definitely see where you're coming from and how it would work.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's no taking away from that.
Yeah.
You know?
So this is the thing. Perfect, as you've just put it, in the realms of sport. But in the realms of reality, in a street fight, you don't want to be on your back or on the ground, on concrete, on the street. And you know this already. We've already spoken about this. But just to reiterate, you know, nobody goes out on their own. Rarely on a Saturday night. They always go with a friend or a group of friends. On a one-on-one, it's fine that a grappler would have a better chance, possibly,
if he can get hold of you.
If he can get hold of him.
Yeah.
But you know, 9 out of 10 times in a real fight, if you get taken down to the ground by a grappler, someone's just going to go kick your head. You know, his mate is just going to. You won't even see it. Yeah. He's just going to get kicked in the head, or worse. Yeah, it happens all the time.
Or the grappler's going to get kicked in the head with your mates trying to protect you. So.
Yeah, that's what I mean. The grappler.
Oh, right. Yeah.
We'll get kicked in the head. You know? You know, you can't ground fight in a real. You can in a real fight, but you know, if you know enough about it, you can get back on your feet, and that's the key thing.
So that is exactly what I like. I like getting down and getting up again. Yeah. No one wants to fight on the floor.
I just want to ask you a question, Rash. I want to know where we're all kung fu exponents here. I want to know where, if you can define it, where kung fu ends and ground fighting begins. Because if we're looking at it from a philosophical point of view, a question, right? Isn't ground fighting part of kung fu anyway? It always was. Like, wasn't it? I mean, you've got striking, you've got china, you've got shui jiao, wrestling, which can then translate to on the floor, and then you've got weaponry. So why when we're talking about kung fu as a style, and particularly Lau, which I'd say is a pretty damn formidable style, even though we don't go into a lot of the china and the joint locks and the wrestling rather, you know, till much later on. But why do we have to separate it, so to speak? Do you know what I mean?
Well, back in time, it was, in the olden days, it was dishonourable to fight on the ground.
Yeah.
You know,
that's why the points fighting was so popular.
Well, not just in the points fighting.
You're talking about historically.
Historically, you know,
right.
If from one person from a kung fu school, from another school, challenged the other master, they get in a scrap. If they took him down, you would allow him to get back up. But if he continued to pound
like the movies, like John Wayne always pulls them up.
Yeah,
punch them again.
Yeah, absolutely. And it still exists in bare knuckle gypsy fighting. If you watch the fights,
there's rules in bare knuckles. Well, there's a referee.
Yeah, there's a referee, and the guy says, "No, let him back up, let him back up."
Yeah,
you know, and so that kind of thing, really. However, now you made a good point. If I modified my Olympic wrestling or my Chinese wrestling, or any of my, you know, kung fu takedowns, and I dropped people on the head, the fight would end there. And a lot of the time, if I took people down properly anyway, it would end, because the power of the takedown, you're finished. Even if you train and you're relatively conditioned. I mean, I've been taken down in a competition, in a gi competition, and my insides got smashed with a heavy, you know, it was a heavy takedown, and it took me a good 20 seconds to get over that internal pain that I was feeling when my organs had been smashed inside, you know, my pelvis and all the rest. If it was concrete, forget it. You know?
Right.
If your head hits the floor, you're done, and you could easily kill someone. You know, if you if I just level change and double leg someone on the street, you'd kill them.
So it's sweeping and throwing and trapping.
Yeah, absolutely. It's dangerous.
And it's all in the kung fu, but for some reason we don't train it. I'm an old fogey, so I come from that era where you're from, which, you know, the fighting, the competitive fighting, and we go as far as trapping. I was pretty good at sweeping, and then but when they got on the floor, that was it. That's all you did. But even with the sweep, they land on their back. Oh, they are, screaming.
Yeah.
Sometimes with a hard floor.
Yeah.
So I never really saw the reason.
Yeah. Well, like you do some chin out. Why would you do it softly if someone's trying to hurt you?
Exactly.
Yeah. So. You'd break it, wouldn't you? And if someone's starting a fight, well, in modern times, obviously we can't dunk someone because you're going to go to prison. So, well, same as you couldn't hit someone in the throat with a leopard fist or whatever. So, no, it's not advisable. I wouldn't advise it. Oh. Unless your life depended on it, and you got a couple of knife wielders, I wouldn't hesitate then. But
hey, it's better to be tried by 12 than carried by 6, as far as I'm concerned.
It's a good point, but do you know what? Over the years, I'm someone that I don't go out looking for trouble, and I've worked in clubs as well as in security, and I worked in clubs doing other stuff. I've had my fair share of fights, and you have to, as a martial artist, I've had to really have a think about what I would do and actively change and tell myself what I would do.
During the confrontation or prior, if there was one to?
Prior to. I've had to have trained my thought that I wouldn't instantly crack someone in the throat, or I wouldn't immediately dunk someone. You have to. And then, I've got a handful of stuff that I would do, and a lot of it involves low-level kicking. Just brutally smashing people's lower limbs out, really, so they can't stand, they can't fight, and that's a better option than going to jail, I think. We
like low kicks.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm talking about limb destruction, limb destruction at low level. So I've had to consciously tell myself, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm going to do. This is what I will do, and it's happened. And I've just, swift low-level shin kicks to the thighs, and I've hit a guy, and I don't think he acknowledged it. But the second one, and then the third one, is when he actually moved, and I kicked his legs out, and he hit the floor. But he couldn't get up. He got up, and he couldn't fight after that. They were done. And I've also kneed someone pretty hard, just one knee, and that stopped him. End of fight. So things like that, you've got away without. It's so easy. I know from my competition fighting that I could tag someone bang on the nose before they moved, before they got anywhere near me. I know I could break their nose, and you do that. Police turns up. One guy's covered in blood, and you're looking fresh as daisy. They're going to go for you. They're going to come and arrest you first and say you started it. Look at him. He must be the victim.
I understand that's a modern. It's you rationalising what you know for a modern world. Does that not in some way detract from your ability as a martial artist if you're having to go, I won't do that, but I'll do this? Do you know what I mean?
Use it. You can't use it.
But why not? I understand why not, because you're talking about like use of force and appropriate, etc. But my question is, if your life depends on it, and you don't know if your life is going to depend on it.
The law is reasonable force, and if you are using reasonable force, whether they're nosebleeds or not, it's reasonable force. So it totally depends on the circumstance, as you say, and the results of the circumstances. So, but you're right. The police, they'll wait outside the pub, wait for the brawl to finish. And when everyone's lying on the floor, that's when they'll go and arrest them, and they don't care who it is. They'll just pick all up. So it doesn't matter. Whether you're in the right, whether you're in the wrong, that's for the courts to decide, not for the police to decide. So that's where the dilemma is. They don't care who they arrest.
Yeah. It frightens me because I do have friends, and I know of people that have I wouldn't say gone to prison. Well, yeah, one of them did. And, boxer friends. And he just punched up. He was on his own, and he punched up a couple of people and fractured skulls, knocked teeth out, and all sorts. And he actually got done for it. So I've got lots of stories I could tell you that from experience.
Well, again, it's how they judge reasonable force. That's basically it. And of course, the first thing you've got to be able to do is to get out of it. If you haven't tried to escape, if you haven't tried to leg it, if you haven't tried to end the fight and be away, then then you're as bad as them in the eyes of the British law.
Yeah, but I think when you go in a courtroom, not I've been in a courtroom, but from what I've been told, you've got people that know nothing about. They just don't condone violence. You know, they just don't like fight, and anyone who's in the fight, they couldn't define reasonable force really.
No.
But it's for the judge to decide. But we all know of instances where someone has been attacked or they've been burgled and they've come out on top. And of course, the burglars then can, sue them, or, they get arrested because they injured the burglar. I think it's a pathetic law. I think it's, it's totally unreasonable. But, that's just, everybody would think that. Nobody would want anyone to break into their house or, try to attack them and then be in a situation where they're in trouble. But it's called, social. It's basically a practical way of keeping social peace, if you want. But it doesn't, unfortunately, that kind of thing doesn't, it doesn't help individuals who are attacked. And today, particularly, isn't it, when the police just haven't got time to do anything, so they'll just go and arrest you.
Earlier on, Rash, you said that the modern threat has changed in relation to martial arts, violence, whatever. What exactly did you mean by that?
Good question. Okay, so we have a lot of backseat martial artists or backseat fans of, like football fans. They never played football, but they go to football games and
they know it's all, don't they?
Yeah. They could do better, but they don't even play football. So it's same thing. Obviously, mixed martial arts have become hugely popular. A lot of people are watching that. A lot of people know the term ground and pound.
Yeah.
Choke him out, rear naked choke. Never done it in their life, and the first time you find that they're trying it is in a street fight because they're a UFC fan or something like that. So that's how it's changed. And you do get idiots that do train MMA as well. Not so, actually, they don't stick at it because a lot of my friends' MMA gyms, there's a few egos in there and a few meatheads, but the wrong type of people don't necessarily stick at it because it's hard work. It is bloody hard training.
Yeah, well, they're trying to beat everybody, aren't they? And in the end, they always find someone that's going to just take them down, and that's that. Yeah. Educate them, shall we say.
Yeah, but generally you've got the hobbyist fan that goes, choke him out or ground and pound, or,
it's like my wife watching the wrestling, the American wrestling.
Yeah.
It's real. It's real.
It's like our comments on Facebook, ground and pound. I'm like, what? I'm doing a stick form here. What? Ground and pound. All right.
So, going back to your question. So in modern times, if you're a martial artist teaching a self-defense, then, being taken down and ground and pound, you need to cater for that. Yeah. You need to address that and offer that training. Something that is quite, obviously, since I've been doing this grappling training, my goal was to become a competent martial artist at all ranges, at long range, close range, grappling range, on the ground, which I can now say I can do.
Yeah, and I completely agree with what you're saying in terms of, like we were talking earlier about how it applies to Lau, if you like. And as we just talked about the law and the way that people perceive, punching someone on the nose, if you could, even if you just slapped them and it didn't even leave a mark, but you got into that situation where you were close enough to then take them to the ground, that does end the fight as long as you can get up again before their mates arrive, and as long as they can't, because you've got them down and either the floor's hurt them or they've dislocated something or they injured themselves when they fell down. And because they did that when they fell down, it didn't necessarily cause that. It was just them attacking you. They fell to the ground, whatever. That's not unreasonable to assume. That's reasonable force. To get them to the ground is reasonable force, you know. And if you can lock them, but without you being on the floor, you know, roll out, turn them round, get them arm in and lock up in the air behind their back or whatever, you're still standing to be able to fight their mates. So it's kind of, and if their mates come any closer, break their arm so they don't get up again.
Yeah. You know, the scraps I've been in, I've never been on the ground.
Oh, you don't want to be? Yeah.
And I never want to be, yeah. So, and I would never advise it, you know. But for my own students, I teach them limited, in my Kung Fu, my own Kung Fu students and kickboxing students, I teach them limited grappling that enables them to deal with, you know, headlocks and ground escapes and those kind of things. So
I was gonna ask you, Rash, what are your thoughts on within the Lau Gar syllabus, there not being that much China grappling until, you know, really you touch on the knife defense, really when you think about it, you know. And, you know, what's your thoughts on that? Do you think it's a detriment to the style in a way that we don't approach it earlier?
Well, I would. Sorry, I'm butting in here because I would agree, and I think Rash would agree with me that it depends totally on how you break a set down. Because in the set,
no, I'm talking just about this. That's why I use the word syllabus. Okay. I use the word syllabus, not
rather than breaking down a set.
Rather than breaking down the sets, because if we're talking about, you know, what it takes to become a black sash.
Yeah, that's right. They don't do any, do they? Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Unless you apply it.
Yeah, I know what Steve is going to say, and I would have said exactly the same thing. And that goes back to my earlier point of when you teach, you know, kid and self-far, and people understand the applications. Yes, how can I explain this? You're right in what you're saying as well. In the syllabus, yeah, it does come later. However, what Steve and I think is if you put people on the path of learning what stuff is for, there hopefully you'll introduce Chin-At a lot earlier.
I absolutely agree.
At you know, white sash level. And for me, I teach it. I teach everything alongside. I teach.
Yeah. And that's what I love about you, Rash. I love the way I've seen your videos, and I love the way you obviously do the similar things, breaking down the sets and putting them into locks. But you don't just put them into locks, do you? You get them to the ground. You don't just trap the knee. You take that foot. You take them all the way down to the ground. Just because you got them with the knee, you can pull their leg, you can pull their head, you can rotate. You want to get them to the floor, and I've never had that opportunity or really the inclination to do that. It's always been kind of stick up, lock in, that sort of thing. But that is what I love about what I've seen, which is, you know, why I wanted everybody to meet you and see.
All right.
Well,
I'll put some. I've got some clips of my students, and I'll put them up on Facebook, and then you can see what I teach them. From Kung Fu to grappling.
We can stick them on the podcast.
We can stick them on the podcast. Yeah, not an issue. Yeah, not an issue. But I won't.
You'll see them working. Sorry, I just explained. You'll see them working a long range into a close range, and then a takedown, and then a grapple, and then they get back up. And so, and it's my students demonstrating. So that's what I've taught them, which is a good example. Yeah, so just tying back in with the way I teach my guys, they'll learn the syllabus as it is. You know, they'll learn a move at a time, and I add that on. They'll learn the application for it. They'll then develop competency in the application, and then they'll take their next grade. You know, and you know, you could go to one of my white sashes and say, "What's that for?" And he'll show you, and he'll do it on you. He'll apply it on you. you know, and that's what I think we should be doing. It doesn't matter about time. So many people, and Steve mentioned that, you know, people just want a grade and they're rushing for a grade. And I've had it in the past, you know, you get people, oh, when can I grade? When can I grade? I know the set, but no, you don't know it. You know, you've just learnt the movements, but you actually don't know it, you know. And unfortunately, this is not just in our style, but lots of other styles. They just know movements.
Yeah, and not just in beginners. Yeah, it's in bloody 4th and 5th degrees as well.
Oh, yeah. So-called grandmasters I've seen. You know, my mate will teach me Dimak. I was saying nothing.
You could go a lifetime and do something, and some people have gone a lifetime, been training 30, 40 years, and they still don't understand. And you know, again, I'm not rubbishing them. I'm trying to go back to what I started with, and you know, in this modern times, we've got to respect why people train, and not everyone wants to be a fighter. Not everyone wants to. You know, some people just want to turn up and just do something, and it gets them out of the house.
But I think, that's brilliant. But I just think the problem they've got is when they like to think they're fighters and they can't do it.
That's the problem. Yeah. So, you know, some people are just into, you know, everyone learns differently. Some people are better than others. Some people quicker than others. Some people are really slow. Some people just want to turn up and do an activity. They're not really that into it, you know. So the fact that they've come through the door, I respect that. You know, they've got.
That's the hardest thing to do. Come through the door.
They got off the sofa. Yeah. But when they come into my class, I don't care. I'll force them to learn it. I'll force them to be good. I will force them to have the information. I wouldn't. Force is the wrong word, but I will. No, I know what you mean. I'll just give it to them. I will give them the information, and I will make them do it whether they want to or not, and they end up doing it and having a skill, a competent skill.
You're always going to have students that you want to teach then.
Yeah, and mainly for my practice as well. Wouldn't it be great for to build people up to a level that I got people to practice with? Because that's the hardest thing. Being for training a long time, you don't have many people you can train with. Many people you can do sticking hands with.
It's lonely at the top, Rash, isn't it?
Hey?
It's lonely at the top.
Well, you know.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
So, you know, the times you mentioned the time between the grading, you know, to Black Sash earlier. Yeah. Well, my guys, like I said, I don't care what anyone else is doing. I just made an active decision to say, right, you're now on this set. We're going to learn this set. Then you're going to learn what it's for. Then you're going to do the practical applications. And then at Blue Sash, my student will be able to tell you what everything is for, each and every point of the set. They should be able to, you know. And then that shows, you know, when they do the movements, it'll look martial as well, because they're not just throwing their hands in the air doing something, you know, that they've had to do for a belt without understanding what it's for. And so on and so on. And the time, you know, this is the traditional way, I think. The time between the grading is irrelevant. It's just when that person's got it.
Yeah.
And what that does, by the time you've got to like Orange Sash or the 3rd grade or 4th, you've got a solid martial artist there that's competent, and that then helps learn anything else beyond that point. They'll learn in half the time. You'll have to correct them less because they're that much more of a mature martial artist, more mature at learning, more mature at understanding.
They're thinking for themselves then.
Yes. But yeah, that's a good point. Now, John Master Russell, he's often, and Mastio, they're two people that want people to think for themselves. And in a Western society, what's changed is, you know, out of 100 people, it's only a minority that are going to think for themselves. So to start with, I believe you've got to give it to them, and then just give it to them, get them in that mode of thinking and mode. Otherwise, you know, like you say, people can train a lifetime and not get it. You know,
but I guess it's just the martial art gene pool, isn't it? Yeah, some will survive and some won't. So it's like a gene pool, isn't it?
Yeah, there's many reasons people start martial arts, and as we in the modern era, particularly a martial art like Kung Fu, which is looked upon as very esoteric compared to MMA, which is pure, you know, in terms of you go in there to learn to beat the shit out of someone, as opposed to Kung Fu. Oh, I don't want to do all these forms, etc. So people's perception doesn't help, you know, when we're trying to teach them Kung Fu. But
right. So this is going to be a video for part 2. Lau Guardian. This is where I contradict myself. It's a highly effective, solid, traditional martial art system. I like it. I love it. I believe in it. If it wasn't any good, I like to think I'm of reasonable intelligence. If it wasn't any good, I wouldn't be doing it. But at the same time, it works and it doesn't work in a real fight.
Okay, so we'll leave it there. We'll leave it there, Rash, because that's a very, very good point to start off part 2 with.
We're looking for ways to apply it then.
Absolutely. We'd like to thank you for joining us.
Can I give you a taster before we go?
Go for it.
Right, so number 1 hand block, for example, most people know how it works in a compliant situation where you get an opponent to punch at you in a certain line and you redirect a punch. I would say 9 out of 10 fights, real fights, street fights, you never get a number 1 hand block off.
You won't get any blocks off. That's my opinion.
So therefore, it doesn't work.
Well, that's how we're going to create that argument.
This is a binary. Okay, you've made a binary statement there, Rash. A binary statement. You've said it doesn't work. Now, you know, if you've been listening, people, viewers, you know we love an argument on the Kung Fu podcast, and that is what we're going to give you on part 2. We'd like to thank Rash for joining us, and we can't wait to do this again. I know you've got to go, Steve, so we'll see you then. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Rash.
Brilliant. Did you enjoy that?
That was great.
Great.
I hope everybody enjoyed our special super duper guest.
Well, part 1. It was part 1, you know, because we got part 2 coming up soon.
I know. He can talk a glass eye to sleep, can't he?
He absolutely, but it was fascinating. Right, so what we're going to do is at the end of this podcast, if you're watching on YouTube, Rash has done some commentaries over some of his videos of his students doing some techniques. So he's just talking a little bit about what he's doing and all the rest of it. So if you're on YouTube, stay tuned for that. What do you reckon?
I love it. I love what he's done with, his training, where he's taken it. He's taken it to, a different level where a lot of us, and I think a lot of people in Laos should be aware of this, that we're not taking them to the ground. Yes, we do self-defense situations and training where some people will take people to the ground, but it's not like a big emphasis. And although it's not the be-all and end-all of Lao, I totally agree with that. It's got a lot of fascinating ways of using it, and I think that's to make it a much sort of exciting part of the training. To add that more, not because it's necessary, because we did discuss the fact that grappling is a bit, he agrees with me, I agree with him, that we are not, you get into a grappling situation in the street, it's not great. I mean, he does suggest that the fact that, if a grappler does get hold of you, well, it's all about your training and his training. So, at the end of the day, low kicks, that sort of thing. Self-defense is self-defense. So
absolutely.
Everyone approaches it differently.
Well, I feel like certainly we didn't quite get to the meat of it. So this is why we're going to do a part 2, so we can really then talk more about sort of the grappling side of it and what he thinks about Lau, because he did end it on a bit of a cliffhanger. I thought he ended it on a cliffhanger. He said that Lau Guard doesn't work. I don't know.
He simply says that the that particular block didn't work, but
I'm kidding. I know.
Yeah, I know. In retrospect, no block works
Yeah.
in self-defense. It's not meant necessarily to be it's called a block per se, but really it's more of a parry, it's more of a strike, it's more of a lock. It's use it for something that works, and if you can't make it work, then it's not done. It's not done that way.
Absolutely.
Sorry, I was going to say, James, without going on. I know where he's coming from, because obviously he wants to teach it in a specific order. So there is teaching beginners just block,
right?
Just block, and that's what he calls his primary objective for that.
Yeah,
and then throws everything else into it.
Yeah. Oh well, we're going to ask him more about the way he teaches, I think. Yeah. And if you stick around right to the end of this, there's a bit of an extra little chat that Rash and me had. And we got a bit geeky about some things. Steve was out the room, we got a bit geeky. So for all you geeks, we were talking about the Gung form and Rash's approach to teaching a bit more. Because I said that, you wouldn't know what the 8 wonders of the universe were.
Me?
Yeah.
I'm interested.
I said he probably doesn't, but he doesn't care about them. No. So stick around for that, all you kung fu geeks, and that's us, guys. We've had to change our music, by the way, Steve. Did you know that? I did the new type ending titles. Anyway, YouTube, they copyright struck us, because we used a melody off I picked it from a Jackie Chan film I like, Wheels on Meals. But we've got to go back to the old closing credit theme.
I like the old credits.
That's great. I like them too. So we'll put them back in, and hopefully YouTube doesn't copyright strike us. Anyway, guys,
I think we should have a geek section now.
We should have a geek section
for people who like the Chinese and that. But don't include me.
Don't include you.
I'll go what?
I think this is probably the reason why it was just Rash and me. I have to say, I went, what? No, it was good fun.
Do you remember that guy you had a kid in the class, Chinese kid, and his dad came in and said,
yeah.
And you said, oh, what style do we do? We said Lau Guardian. He went, it's not Lau Guardian, it's And I thought, shut up. Because everyone's different, and that's why I don't like, the Chinese terminology, because I'm not Chinese. I'm not pretending to be Chinese.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not pretending to speak the language. You can if you want, but good luck to you. That will take half your training.
Yeah.
And you'll always be wrong. You'll always be wrong. Someone will always say you're wrong. And I got so fed up of that. I'm going, whatever, And whenever I had Chinese people in the class, I'd always look at them and say, I don't speak Chinese, so don't listen to me. And half of them would go, nor do I.
Oh, fantastic. Brilliant. Right then, so we'll see you next time on another episode of the Kung Fu Podcast, people. And once again, we'd like to thank our guests. And remember, stay tuned for part 2 coming up. And it's goodbye from me, James Still. And it's goodbye from you. Who are you?
Steve. And I did forget to mention, and I will mention it next time, that we did have some questions. But we'll do the questions next time.
That's right, yeah.
I'm just going to send them a video. So
no problem.
Some questions on the sword and some questions on number 8.
Right. Excellent. Yeah, eagerly wait. Okay, guys, take care of yourselves. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Right, bye.
Concentrate on your enemy's weak points. The eyes, the throat, the knackers.
Hi guys, thanks so much for joining us on the Kung Fu Podcast. If you like that and you want to find out more about us, you can head over to Facebook, Twitter, Instagram or YouTube and find us under SJN Martial Arts. And also guys, this podcast is available on Podbean and iTunes. So until next time, take care of yourselves and we'll see you again on the Kung Fu Podcast.
karate punch is like an iron bar, whack. A kung fu punch is like an iron chain with an iron ball attached to the end, and it go whang.
Can you break a log like that?
Don't know. Never been attacked by tree.
So this first clip, two students just working some light striking, and the one is level changing, closing the distance and taking the other one down, and I get back up and repeat, basically. Okay, so this next clip, I've got two of my students. One trains with me in grappling, and the other one not so much. So they've just worked from a striking distance, closed the distance, and then Eve has executed a takedown, and he's sort of continuation of the fight on the ground with some striking and working into an armbar, I believe, which will break his arm. You know, obviously the one taps and they start again, and that's the drill. The important thing is I'm not trying to... people will watch this and say, oh, that's MMA. Well, in a term of mixed martial arts, yeah, it is mixed martial arts, but I'm not... This is not MMA cage fighting. I've got no intention of doing this for cage fighting. This is mixed martial arts, a mixed style of ranges, if you like, for a street fight, for actual combat that they're practicing. So they're practicing at all levels, at a stand-up level for striking, and then they're closing the range and they're working at that level, and then follows a takedown, and they're continuing to work on the ground and a finish. So this clip here, he's already they've already got to the stage of the takedown, and they're on the ground. One is just working his control, keeping himself safe, and he's just working for another little key lock there, it's called. Last clip, again, they're just going again. They've reset, they're back on their feet. They're starting at a closer grappling level, and then they've broke contact back to a long range striking level. Bit of movement. And they're working, he's working in, yeah, into a little grappling, and then he should execute a takedown at some point. Collar tying him around his neck, control. And he's done a little hip toss, then straight into an armbar to finish. So now Isaac is trying to resist and escape. So Eve has continued, and now he's taking his back, and he's done a choke to finish. So yeah, good demonstration of a variety of techniques there. Did you eat?
I did not, no.
Are you hungry?
I am starving, Rash. Rash has just hijacked my edit because he wants to make a point. This is for you guys, okay? So Rash...
Oh, don't put this in.
Oh, I got to put this in. This is part of the fun.
No.
Okay. Go for it. Go for it. What do you want to say?
Okay, yeah, so I just wanted to conclude by saying, you know, that's my idea and method of teaching, that I've decided to do it a certain way, and I think it's the correct way to learn something slowly over a period of time, understand it. You know, I think it's the ideal way, even though it's my opinion. You know,
it definitely is the ideal way, but it's not like we said earlier on. People aren't always going to necessarily do what's best for the students, though, because they want to make the money from the grades. They do, and in some cases they don't have the knowledge themselves to be able to, you know.
Yeah, that's a shame. But like I said, you know, I'm just other people can do what they want. I just made the active decision myself to kind of draw a line and say, this is how my students are going to learn. They're going to learn the syllabus, and then they're going to learn how to use it, and then they're going to develop some competency in using it.
Yeah.
and then take their grade. And then it doesn't matter how long it takes. You know, there's no rush. There's no. I know people are super keen, and I understand you know, some people, you've got to find a balance of keeping people motivated to come and, but you know, going for a piece of cloth, a coloured piece of cloth, is quite shallow, really. Without, you know, I think from experience and doing it the way I do it, the real reward comes from, you see it in the students, because you know, it's like teaching someone to balance a ball on the end of a stick or something. At one time they couldn't do it, and it kept falling off, and it kept falling off. And now they're balancing it, and now they're super happy, and they're smiling because they can balance it and keep it going, and they can extend their tricks. So the thing with the Kung Fu, you know, they learn it, they don't know how to use it, and then the reward comes when they can use it, and they're smiling because, oh yeah, I can do this. This works.
Yeah.
And that's the reward for them, and that's the reward for me. And whereas if you think, oh, you know, rather than just the belt be the reward and not understand what you're doing, I don't think that's the way to go.
No, absolutely.
Even though I hold my hands up, in the past, I probably have done a bit of that. You know, I have graded people and they haven't understood what they're doing.
Yeah.
But like I say, I drew a line some years ago and I said, this is the way I'm going to do it. So by the time they get to Black Sash, they're fully competent and they're really good learners. You know, and they understand everything, and that'll just help them for whatever they learn further on, forever.
Yeah.
You know? And that's my take on it, really.
No, that's great.
Really important point.
Yeah. No, it's absolutely. I mean, you know,
do you want to be a black belt who can't use what they know, or do you want to be a black belt that understands everything, can use it to an extent? You know, you might not be great at it, but you know, they don't. There's nothing that they. I mean, I would feel a fool if I'd been training however many years, and you know, walking around with my, you know, grade, and I'm saying, oh yeah, what's that for? And I go, I don't know. I had to do it for my purple belt, or do it for my, you know, yellow sash. I don't know what it's for. I would be embarrassed. You know?
Yeah. Do you see like, in terms of the sashes then?
Yeah.
In some way, is that like do you think it detracts from the learning having an actual grade system, or do you think it enhances the learning by giving people sort of goals to attain, you know, in the short term? Whereas we know that, you know, really, once you get to black sash, black belt, whatever, then that's really when your journey begins, so to speak. Do you think that it's good that we've got grades, or do you think that it, you know, within the style that we do, Lau Gar, really, if we're looking at the pure essence of it, that the grades should never have been? It's all about experience and your knowledge of how to apply it.
Yeah, you know, grades are okay as a marker in modern times. People put it on us. I think when Mastiao first started teaching, there wasn't grade. There definitely wasn't grades. Or he started, you know, and it was something that was put upon him because people kept asking him, oh, you know, can we have a grade? Can we do this? Karate people are doing this.
Yeah.
So, you know, yeah, he had to formulate a syllabus, and but it, you know, it was very much put on him. But you know, Western society is asked for it, so you know, he's obliged.
Yeah.
But you know, his core principles and values will still be about the art and understanding it and being able to do it how it's supposed to be done.
Yeah. Then, all right, with that sort of in mind, why carry on going up the grades as you second degree, third degree, fourth degree? I mean, yourself, you're a sixth degree. At what point during those grades did you sort of feel that, you know, my learning is getting, you know, even more I'm in depth, so to speak, or do you just kind of put it down to it's more time, more experience? What's the point in the degree grades then, if we're talking about grades?
Again, they're just markers. There's no real. I mean, the most significant set in your degree grades is back in gung.
Right.
Once you learn that and you understand that, and really, there's no reason why you shouldn't learn it earlier.
Yeah.
Because it's set at 4th degree, I think, and then I think I guess it's assumed about martial maturity and thinking, how mature you are, or as a thinker, or how you understand something.
Yeah.
To be able to take on back in gung. But once you learn back in gung and you understand the games, then that set washes through all of your other Lau Guardian. Anything you've done previously,
right?
It kind of washes through.
So
it should wash through.
So from what I understand of back in gung, it's they kind of market it as, I say market it, but it's sort of a training set or a training. Is that the right word? It's a training set. What are, in terms of back in gung, what are the 8 wonders of the universe? Because old man newbie doesn't know that, and I was hoping you might know.
Well, if you ask Master Yao, he'd tell you to go and find out. So maybe...
Oh, I see. It's like that, is it?
Well, I went to Birmingham and I saw the diagram up on the wall,
right,
which was just written in Chinese, and I said, Master Yao, what's that? What does it mean? Can you explain it? And
you mean the yin yang with all the characters around?
Yeah. The diagram.
Yeah.
And he said, well, it's up to you to go and find out. And I'm like, well, I don't speak. Well, I do speak a bit of Chinese, but not like read Chinese to that level.
Yeah.
So my idea was to take a picture of it and then take it into my local Chinese takeaway and get a interpretation.
You can joke, but that's exactly what I did. I used to teach a student called Richard Wong. I think he's like a 2nd degree or something, down Bromyard Way. He owns a Chinese chip shop. And when I went in there to take him this bit of this paper, the thing, to translate it for me, his entire family lined up and they all bowed at me. He said, "This is my student." I was like, "Oh yeah." Anyway, so he translated it for me, so I've got it all, So I was quite chuffed with that.
Tok and toe and chun and
and tan and this and that and the other. Yeah. It's great.
So they're the principles. Back in. You have the 8 powers, main powers, and then you got the 19 keywords,
right?
And they all relate to different energy and and then you kind of go back through your sets and you identify what is top to lift, hewn to circle.
Right.
Stamp, press.
I tell you what, it's a good job old man newbie isn't here. He'd be going, what?
Oh, right. It sounds all mysterious again.
It does.
No, it does sound all mysterious, only because I'm talking about something that you might not know about. Right. But it's not, honestly. And that's what some other people do in their delivery of seminars. Right. They talk about stuff that you don't know, so it's amazing, but really it's quite it's simple. Is
it down to the interpretation of whether or not, like you say, you might not know, but surely, like, if we can interpret the style I interpret it in quite simplistic ways, right? So I don't feel like, for a lot of the time, I don't feel like to understand what Tok is and Hyun and all that. I get rotations, I get that. Not as well as you, not as well as Steve. But, do you think that a lot of people probably understand it, but they don't know they do until it's, sort of presented to them?
People are doing it already.
Yeah, right, that's what I mean. Yeah.
All you're doing is just identifying it and giving it a name.
Right. So
people do it already.
So how important is the name, though? How important is the name? If people are already doing it, are we that bothered?
Yes and no, because it's taken your learning to another level. I shouldn't say just higher level, because level-wise, you might do a perfect yin or a perfect tok, so you might not, level-wise it might be fine, but just you take it to another level of understanding.
Right.
And especially from a teacher's point of view, you basically you're identifying your movement, and calling it something rather than just doing it. In English, we do it if we had to. This is lifting.
Yeah. Right.
But you've just learnt a Chinese name, tok, to lift.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's all it is. But then once you identify through your set and the 8 or the 19 key, you'll then realise you'll identify all the components of your set related to those descriptions and those tags, and then you'll realise you're not doing anything much outside of those 8 or 19 keywords. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. You're unknowingly you're basically, it's like we always talk about the basics, and no matter what you do, you're always going to revert to certain basics. So, but you can self-identify, I'm rotating, I'm bouncing, I'm, pressing or whatever.
That helps with your power as well. So where you need to bounce, to generate the bounce, the relaxation of creating that movement, or tan to stamp, or yan, sorry, not tan. Okay, so yan is the stamp.
Right.
But that's not like a kicking stamp.
Right.
That's like a stamp. When you go to the post office and they do the old school, and they go doop doop.
Right.
It's that kind of
I'm with you. Right.
solid stamp.
Do you kind of, when you're doing Shaolin stamps, is that?
No, that's different.
Oh, right. But that's a stamp. Oh, with the foot. Oh, right.
With the foot. So actually,
this is why it's so confusing. Oh.
Yeah, with the foot it is, but with the fist. Actually, yeah, it is a stamp with the fist as well.
Bloody
You're
hell.
gonna have to cut this up.
What are the 8 wonders of the universe?
Well, it's Tan, Yan, To, Chum, Gurn, Tao, Tun, and Chun.
Okay. So
Not
what
necessarily.
What do they mean in English? What's that? I don't know.
Well, that's up to you to find out.
Oh, is it?
It's the words of Mastiao.
See, this section is going to be for all the Kung Fu geeks out there. The Kung Fu geeks, they want to know this.
It's nothing mystical. It's just you've got to just go and find out what it is and apply it, and it'll just help you improve your Kung Fu. It'll change your Kung Fu. In fact, another significant thing that I did that improved my Kung Fu was Tai Chi.
Yeah, Steve says the same.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So, doing Tai Chi significantly improved my Kung Fu. I was more aware of everything, my weight, structure, posture. It changed. Yeah, everything changed.
Yeah.
And I was much more accurate as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. When you say accurate, what do you mean by that exactly?
Just refinement of movement. Really.
Okay. So you mean you're more economical?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. That's interesting, that, because Steve says the same thing about Tai Chi. He said, sort of doing it helped him, sort of really analyze and dissect a lot of the Lau, a lot more so than I think he would have normally. But, obviously, again, with Master Yao's guidance as well. But, yeah, it's interesting you say that.
Well, you'll understand more about your set. You'll understand more about, if you do all of your Lau Gar sets, I know Film C's slower.
Yeah, slow, yeah.
And maybe it is slower for that reason, purposely slower. So you've got a set that is an example of practice that you could then carry the same method of practice to the other sets.
Yeah.
And if you did that, everything's slow, and understand where your weight is and how it transfers and how it engages with each technique and how it forms and connects at the end of your movement, where your weight is. You're fully aware of where your weight and balance is. However, saying that's in transitional movement.
Yeah.
But also, sometimes you can't move that slow to generate certain energy and force. So you can't do everything.
When you say you can't move that slow and generate certain energy and force, aren't you replicating the? I mean, if you look at Tai Chi, when you create the power, even though it's slow, you are aligning your body, etc.
Yes.
You could not do. Obviously, you can do the same thing in Lau, right? So
yeah, you can do it slowly, but there's certain. Well, they do it in Tai Chi as well. You got certain looseness and relaxation.
Yeah.
But I'm saying you can't falsify the whip.
I understand what you're saying now. Yeah.
You have to just do it loosely. Yeah. You have to be loose, relaxed, soft, and whip.
Yeah.
You can't.
You can't do it
slow.
Whip. Yeah. You can't do it. Yeah.
Well, you can, but it's not.
It's not gonna. It's not. Yeah.
For the energy.
Yeah,
Same as a punching. You can practice slowly to transition your step, then your weights, and then the punch arrives.
Yeah.
But really, you should be soft, relaxed, and then bang, hit.
It's like we always kind of. I don't know what your thoughts are on this. We always make the point of saying really the internal and external arts are non-existent because they're entwined with each other. You can't have one without the other. You can't say that it's purely external or purely internal. You really have to understand that in all Chinese martial arts, Chinese arts, it's there's no such thing. It just is. And I think there's a lot of focused people put on Chinese martial arts, and they like to classify them. They like to say, "Oh, it's external, it's internal, it's northern, it's southern, it's this, that, the other." But I think certainly what we talked about earlier on, and looking at the basics, and how often do you see basics like repeated in across the board in kung fu styles, like whether it's Tan Sao in Wing Chun or what we do or Choi Lei Foot, whatever, it's going to pretty much look the same technique, and it's I don't know what I was saying then. I just went off on one.
You did one. You did.
Sorry, mate. Sorry. I was just we could what's the point I was making, that essentially all Chinese martial arts are really the same. It's just strategies and tactics that you change.
Some specialize or promote a certain way. Like some things have an internal route, some things have an external route. But as they say, as you reach the top of the mountain, the view is the same. And, eventually, you'll get both anyway.
Yeah. No, that's I firmly believe that.
Providing you get up there, but I think not enough people think about or focus on the internal training. But I'm of the view, worry about it later, because I think from a real fight point of view, if you came from an internal angle and you followed an internal way of training, it would take you a lot longer to be any good at it. A lot longer.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, it's just the way it is, common sense. And you come from an external, fight straight away, boom.
Yeah.
So I would always, martial art is for the fight. Well, it should be about the fight, and that's the way I think of it. But I understand it's not that way for everyone.
Yeah,
and that's what we were talking about earlier.
Yeah,
I'm not saying I'm better or rubbishing anyone else's way of practicing or understanding.
Yeah.
If they want to do it just as a practicing movement, and that's fine. You know, if it makes them happy and they're happy doing that, and they're gaining something from it, some enjoyment and pleasure. But I just think I'd like to do it the way it was designed for and what it was designed for.
Yeah.
That's me.
I think certainly with someone of your experience and your position now, it's your duty to do it like that. You have to try and preserve the style as best you can. But in order to really do that, you've got to understand the purpose of it. It is a fighting style. Yeah. Nothing more. Everything else can stem from that.
Yeah, the only point I'd make, which this is a message for anyone who's listening, is would Mastiao consider doing his style any other way for any of the other reasons? And he wouldn't. He would only consider doing it in an applicable fighting way. He wouldn't do it for health. He wouldn't do it for wushu, for display. You know, he would do his kung fu how it's meant to be done, how it was designed to be done.
Yeah.
No more, no less. There's no adaptations or equations of, you know, he's doing it to look good. He's doing it because it is a martial art.
Yeah.
And that's the message, really. That's the important tip, if you like. Do it the way the master wants it done, the way the master intended it for it to be done, and the way he wants it. You know, that's what he would like to see, I think.
Yeah. Oh well, I love the message. Thank you so much, Rash. And if you've stayed, you know, if you've hung on for this little extra, you know, thank you. We appreciate it, guys. And you'll join us again for part 2 soon. Take care of yourselves. Bye bye.